allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
If we could have a roll call.
Yes. Jamie Allen.
Here.
Brian Flynn.
Here.
Chris Perkins. Keith Ravenberg.
Here.
Keith Sulzer.
Here.
Lindsay Spencer.
Here.
Carrie Charleston.
All right. So that moves us into our agenda with our tax rate hearing tonight.
All right, thank you all for the opportunity to present the 2022 tax rate hearing. This is the amount that will fund our 2022-23 year. So we're going to be kind of bouncing back and forth between what is 2022 and what is 2022-23. The distinction is fiscal year versus calendar year. So each year we have responsibility to have our tax rate hearing, and we publish our tax rates throughout our community. We have a list of those places that are placed with Ms. Hastings that are available for signature at the end of the meeting to show that we did our due diligence as far as publishing those documents. So as far as our tax rates, just as a brief summary, everybody knows our voters approve our tax rates. Our state government, which is our local government, which is ourselves, school district, is responsible for setting our tax rate. Missouri state auditors review our tax rate for compliance purposes, and then we finally approve and post that with our county government. We have different types of taxes. We have personal property, we have real property, so residential property, commercial, agricultural. What I added this year was an amount for what those amounts are. So there's the appraised value and then the assessed value. So each one of the percentages to the right of that is actually the percentage that the assessed value is based upon what you might call the appraised value. So those are the statutory limits that are set. So residential is set at 19% of appraised, commercial is at 32%. We don't have a whole lot of agricultural in Brentwood School District. Some brief historical events. We passed bonds to fund the renovation of our school districts in 2018 and 2020. And then we also passed a operating tax increase in 2013. And in 2021, I wanted to draw attention to this. The blankenship decision went into effect, so there was a rollback that was applied to our school district. There was nothing that was performed out of compliance. The Missouri state auditors approved it, and then later there was litigation with the state that caused the state auditors to rescind their original certifications. The reason why that's important is because part of the reason why we're having this meeting later is because we had conversation between the Missouri state auditors and Brentwood School District in preparing a recoupment. So we were only permitted to recoup last year's funds as opposed to 3 years of recoupments due to that. Some brief information. We have a reassessment in odd years. We have new construction any year. The basis of our growth is the lesser of the consumer price index, assessed valuation growth of 5%. So this year our total growth is 1.8% because that was the growth of our assessed valuation. Then we also have our Prop C rollback. We are one of the school districts that has not performed a Prop C rollback. So out of that amount, we have 9 cents that's recouped through what we received from the Department of Elementary and Secondary Education. We also have before us part of this presentation the recommendation of the 25-cent recoupment for commercial property. That we will get to. I will point that out why just a few slides. As far as our calendar, we have a little bit. I don't know if you guys can read this. Okay, it's tiny print. A lot of things going on here. Basically, what we're saying is that in March, in an odd year, we send out our non-binding tax rates. We have a preliminary budget proposed to our school district Board of Education. By June 30th, we adopt a budget. Then in September, typically, we receive our information for assessed valuation, post-Board of Equalization. We prepare a tax rate. We submit that to our school district, school board. We post that, publish that with our county government. And then in December and February, we start receiving the majority of our funding We're typically funded at 97 and 98% of our total budget revenue based upon local effort. So that is primarily local taxation. Just some information to see how our assessed valuations moved. Just see that the total amount of increase of assessed valuation is 1.8%, but you'll also see two kind of abnormal numbers. Commercial decreased by 4.4% due to protesting, and then personal property increased by 19.5%. So those two numbers basically balanced each other out. But the increase in personal property came in as new construction this year, which created a certain amount of additional proceeds for this year.
So the personal property tax, that's primarily used vehicles that have increased in value due to supply chain issues, Matt?
Our understanding is this was appreciation of personal vehicles.
Okay.
So what this is just a visual of how those assessed valuation numbers have changed. You'll see that there's just a continuous growth that's occurring. Residential's moving along at a steady pace. Commercial's pretty much stalled out. And then personal property doesn't look as aggressive here as what it really ended up being because it's being compared to those other much stronger, higher dollar numbers. So these are some options that can happen in a non-reassessment year. You can have a rollback. We're not recommending that at this time. We can also perform rollbacks on bonds, which we do have a portion of that, and I'll explain why. We can do that in any year. We can also do a recoupment in any year. Our recoupment for this year is based upon a restatement of assessed valuations. That amount, we receive an assessed valuation, what is commonly referred to as post-board of equalization. That's the number we use to calculate tax rates. Between Board of Equalization and billing, the assessor's office can make changes. They typically don't, but if they're trying to close their outstanding protested taxes, they will do that. And that's what happened this year. So we actually, for commercial property, had $129 million that was originally published as assessed valuation for commercial property. In between post-board of equalization and the assessed valuation and billing, it reduced to $119 million. So what we are recommending as part of that recoupment, we should have flipped to this side. The total amount of recoupment that we could potentially receive is $386,000. What we're going to be recommending is closer to $300,000 because that's solely commercial property. We are not making a recommend to recoup against our residential property. We've historically not applied recoupments that were available against our residential, and we've only gone and applied those funds against our commercial. The amount in the bigger scheme of things was not considered to be consequential.
So just to put an exclamation point on that one, it's basically that we can recoup on the commercial side, but in the Brentwood School District, we've been, we appreciate that we're well funded by our community, and so while we could go back and recoup this year, I believe it would be in the neighborhood of about $70,000 from our community members. We are opting to not do that and to just recoup the commercial rates.
The Missouri State Auditor's Office permit us to apply our recoupments in whatever fashion we feel fit. We are recommending to continue providing 28 cents toward our capital projects fund. This provides slightly more than $1 million toward our capital projects. Historically, our district's been committed to providing funding to our capital projects and to continue providing those facility needs in accordance with our facilities department's planning documents. This is just another summary of how our levies have been applied for our general obligation bonds. The biggest points of note is that when we passed our debt service for 2020, we phased that levy in. So in 2020, we passed the full 89 cents from our voters. We phased that in at 51 cents, and then last year we applied the entire 89 cents. We are recommending to continue the 89 cents with the following year, which is the total amount that we authorized from our community. This is just a rundown of what our levies are going to be. In total, residential levy is increasing. Now, this is not the dollars it's producing, it's the percentage increase of the levy. So residential is increased by 3.9%, commercial is increased by 12.2%, and personal property increased by 6.29. So one thing that is not affecting this year and will affect it next year is right now new construction. So most of our increase in personal property is showing up in new construction. That will fall into regular personal property in the following year. This is just our blended rates. This is more for the purposes of reporting Department of Elementary and Secondary Education. This is not for the purposes of how we actually apply collections. In total, our blended rate is increasing by 4.9%. Total proceeds. Our total revenue is increasing by 6.8%. Based upon the items that we pointed out earlier, the 19.2% increase in personal property, and then also the recoupment that's recommended of $300,000. We're assuming a 94% collection rate, and that 94% collection rate is reflected in these figures.
So, Henry, can I just ask a question? You were saying for the personal property for new builds, that's going into the personal property bucket right now, and then it ups into residential the following year, or am I not?
So I might, if I misspoke, I'm sorry. So personal property is set as its own type of
Right.
property.
But with
So
vehicles and boats or things like that, is that
those
correct?
items typically depreciate.
Okay,
But as your assessed valuation is set in any one year, and if it's considered to be new construction, we get to keep that total revenue. So our revenue stream shouldn't decrease in the next year. The exception is the exception is recoupment. Recoupment can be applied over the course of 1 or 3 years. But it's that dollar value that you're recouping it over those 3 years potentially.
So I guess the question is, where does new construction?
end up in this, on these three buckets,
So
I guess
they
that
all
one.
stay within their own bucket.
So
if it's
residential,
personal-
stay,
yes.
like homes always stay in the residential, okay, I was just getting a little bit confused.
Well,
with
what, I mean, what personal property, what would be new construction?
Right.
So the way that they calculate that is actually just the difference between the assessed valuations. So when we do the calculation, they'll say there's, I'm just gonna say $100 million of assessed valuation for personal property last year. And there's $110 million of assessed valuation for personal property this year. The new construction portion is the 10 million.
But there's not,
There's nothing built.
but let me, it's not new construction, that's just, in this case, appreciation. So cars, the supply chain is tight, cars have appreciated. I guess what I'm wrestling with, new construction for residential and commercial makes perfect sense.
Yes.
New construction for personal makes no sense to me. It's a function of appreciation on assessed valuation, or we bought more stuff.
Right, or new
Right.
vehicles
We
or
bought
something,
more.
okay, that's where I was
So,
getting a
I
little
mean,
bit confused, yes.
conceptually, it's the same, when
Yes.
you buy more, your assessed valuation will go up, because I now have 3 cars, and I only had 2.
Right,
Or appreciation, not necessarily, so new acquisition is what I view as not new construction.
Yeah.
So they call it new construction
Mhm.
for the purposes of our format.
Okay.
But I understand the confusion. You're not actually improving your car.
Right.
If you didn't
Yeah.
put new tires
For
on your
anybody-
I
car,
didn't build it.
Yeah.
increase the
Right.
value of your
Yeah.
car.
okay,
It's-
perfect, that's what I was looking for.
It's really just, like you said, it's a function of what was the assessed valuation last year and what is the assessed
Mhm.
valuation this year.
Right.
The difference.
So what we would call, what most people would call new construction would fall under either commercial or residential.
Yes.
Based on obviously which it is, so, yeah, that is.
So
I'm glad we
improvements
clarified
are
that.
like if you improve your kitchen,
Yeah.
that's going to increase the value of your home. That should be reported as new construction in residential.
Right,
Right.
Yes.
perfect, okay, thank you for that.
Improve your interior in your car, but you're not new constructing anything.
So can we, sorry, we can come back. Maybe questions at the end.
You can review it. I've got a question slide, but we don't have to use it.
Well, I'll let you finish, I'll come back, I won't forget it, hopefully.
So our recommendations to our school board are setting our residential rate at 4.39, or $4.39 on 100 of AV assessed valuation. Of that, 89 cents is set as debt service. Commercial rate, $5.62 on per $100 of assessed valuation. Personal property, $4.90 on $100 of assessed valuation. Each one of these amounts includes our recoupment value, includes our debt service, and also includes the reduction for our Prop C reduction rollback. Our blended rates that are being recommended are incidental, which is our operations, not including capital, $3.67. Debt service is at 89 cents. Capital projects is at 28 cents as stated, with a total blended rate of 4.85 on per $100 of assessed valuation. Any questions that I can help with?
Yes, can we, if we go back to this, up towards the front, just the basis for assessed valuation? I just want to ask a question and maybe make a point. So it was slide, factors that affects tax rate. That one. So, and this is specifically related to conversations in the city right now with the development, right? So the second and third point, so new construction, and I'm talking residential and commercial, I'm not talking personal property, but we just talking any new construction will go in, as long as it's not abated, comes into and becomes basis for our assessed valuation. Is that true?
Yes.
So at that point, we are not restricted by the Hancock Amendment in terms of limiting the CPI or AV growth. That just becomes part of our basis
Yes.
and is a net benefit to our bottom line.
Yes, that's our understanding.
Any abatement that occurs then will actually start to erode at the potential gains that we had in that new construction. Meaning, so the point I'm making is if we have new construction that's built and the valuation and the assessed valuation associated with it is a certain number, any abatement will actually limit the ability for us to recoup revenues against that assessed
Yes.
valuation.
So basically, a recoupment becomes more severe against the people that are actually paying taxes.
So point being, there is a net benefit to the community for us as taxpayers to have new construction because we will get the revenue benefit without having to pass back or increase potentially tax rates on existing property, both residential, commercial, and then personal property.
Yes.
And we did research, I think, because I know Keith, you were in the conversations, we wanted to make sure we were clear that we weren't restricted by the Hancock Amendment, and what we got back was that is true.
Correct. That's really about the only things that doesn't fall under the Hancock Amendment. That's why new construction is so
Yep.
valuable.
Yeah, I mean, anything new, you get the benefit of the addition to the assessed valuation that will carry forward, and that's just part of the pot now, and so that initial bump is really beneficial. Then as you subject it to any type of abatement, obviously the benefit then lessens.
I had a question on you said you were assuming 94% for the collection, and I just looked at the audit from last year, and we were like 95, 97, 98, 99, 97, I guess we're just trying to be overly conservative in our budgeting?
It is a conservative factor. One of the things that affected us the most was that 95% year. So that's really what we've been applying. We've also used 94% historically for these reports. But yes, we had looked into increasing that collection rate, and then year before last, we had that 95% collection rate year, which had pulled us back to 94.
I mean, we'll always be at 98.5 because the county keeps 1.5% for themselves,
Sure.
so.
We can never exceed that, is what you're saying?
Yeah, like if we collected 100%, the
One-
county
one and a
keeps
half
in half,
is
they,
okay,
yeah, they
yeah.
take their VIG and then.
It's the way government works,
Yeah, I know, it's you kick off.
and we're part of it.
Yes. No, I'm fine with that. I mean, when you're budgeting, you should always go with the conservative approach to budgeting. I'm just wondering if 94 might be
Overly conservative.
It's
overly
I think
conservative.
it's, and we've always used that number.
It's been the number that I've looked at.
Okay.
And I've got, and it sounds bad, but literally I have a box full of tax rate calculations that go back probably 15 years, so. But I mean, if it's something that we want to look into. we
I mean, I'm fine with just sticking with historical. I'm just,
Have we ever gone below 94%?
Not in near history. The biggest impact we had, like I said, was 2 years ago. That impact, the issue that we had with that was our current taxes came in, but our delinquent taxes, we ran into the red. So we actually, because of the protest with commercial, that actually hit us that year before last. And the way they do that, because St. Louis County does not hold protested taxes in an escrow, they release them. So if they get protested successfully after the funds have been released to the municipalities, the county reaches back into whatever amount of distribution is left for the school districts or whatever muni, and they take it from those distributions. So year before last, we didn't receive funding from St. Louis County until November.
Okay.
Which we kind of budget that way anyway. That's the reason why we use the fund balance targets that we have, but that's an extreme situation. Sure.
Okay.
All right. If I could get a motion to approve the tax rates.
I move that we set the tax rates by fund as follows. Incidental fund set at $3.6758. Debt service fund set at 0.8990. Capital project fund set at 0.2820, for a total blended rate of 4.8568.
second?
Discussion? I thought your presentation was great. You had some more details just around your calendar this year, which was helpful for me. So I just thank you for all of that. All right, all in favor say aye.
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 Any opposed? All right, that is approved. Thanks, Matt.
Thanks,
Thank you.
Thank you.
Can we approve the consent agenda?
Yes.
I move that we approve the consent agenda, Kate, as outlined.
Second?
Discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
There was
I now
trying to
move-
do it without the agenda up in front of me. I told Brian, I was like, watch me just do this, and I missed something.
Well, I'm going to help you.
Thank
I
you.
now move that we adjourn.
Second that.
All right, we can have roll call to adjourn, please.
Jamie Allen?
Yes.
Brian Flynn?
Yes.
Chris Perkins? Keith Ravenberg?
Yes.
Keith Slesser?
Yes.
Lindsey Spencer?
Yes.
Gary Trostle?
Okay, thank you, everyone.
So, thank you so much.
Thank you.
The lowest I see, Matt, was about a 96 back in 2006, 7.
That is
I went back and looked back at the last, like,
Oh, so I knew that.
you know what, 95%.